Found a child shirt in my fiancé's belongings, accused him of hiding a secret child, now stuck in silent despair. I met my fiancé when we first dated as kids back in middle school. Years drifted by with us living separate lives until we reconnected about 2 years ago. It was almost uncanny how perfectly we meshed together, so much that we decided to take a leap of faith and just go for it. His family is all down in Texas, while I was living in Minnesota. When his mother's health started failing, he bought a 2-bedroom place here about a year ago to be closer to her. In the beginning, after we realized how serious we were about each other, he started flying back and forth every couple weeks. Eventually, I found myself growing tired of the distance and just asked him to stay with me. It was almost unspoken between us, either I move here, or we go long distance, something neither of us truly wanted. After thinking it through, I quit my job and made the move. It's been officially 40 days since I settled into this new city and life with him. Just last week, while rummaging through the garage looking for something, I stumbled on a pair of tiny Nike shoes, clearly for a baby. I asked him about them, and he shrugged it off, saying he had no idea whose they were. At the time, I didn't think much of it and simply tossed them aside. But things took a turn 2 days ago. Sorting through the laundry hamper, I found a little pink blue YT shirt, probably meant for a 5 or 6-year-old. That memory of the shoes came rushing back, and suddenly, my mind went into overdrive. Panic and doubt crept in as I wondered if he was hiding a huge secret from me, maybe a child I didn't know about. I admit, my emotions got the best of me. I accused him of lying, pressed him for answers, and the whole situation exploded into a heated argument. He swore up and down he had no idea where these things came from. I should mention, he's an only child and keeps in touch with his parents, but there are no nieces to explain this away. He had nothing to offer me except his insistence that he truly didn't know what I was talking about. After that, the conversation just shut down. I could tell he wasn't going to push me to talk, and honestly, it felt like I was just floating in this heavy silence. Since yesterday, a deep despair and an overwhelming sense of regret have been nagging at me for moving here, away from everything I knew. I don't even know if I had a right to feel this way, but it's eating at me. Every time I think about apologizing for blowing up, I feel sick, like I'd be letting myself down if he actually is keeping some secret from me. The irony is that he's never given me any reason before to doubt his honesty, yet nothing about this situation makes sense. I'm left grappling with distrust, confusion, and a little heartbreak, unsure of what move to make next. I'm using the little money I have left to get out, heading back home and staying at a motel until I can get on my feet again. Luckily, before I left, my boss told me I was always welcome back, and now it's time to take her up on that offer. My flight's in 2 days. I wish I could say I handled everything with absolute maturity, but about an hour after I spoke to her, she texted him, "Call me." I panicked. I broke his phone and told him I'd accidentally spilled water on it. I'm still not sure what he suspects, but it doesn't matter now. I can't begin to describe the pain. I keep replaying every conversation, every little moment that didn't add up, trying to see what I missed. In all our talks about me moving here, he never begged me or tried to guilt me into it. In fact, a month before I made the move, he seemed ecstatic. He even sent me job listings in the area, making it sound like he was ready to start a life with me. But in the end, I was nothing to him. I uprooted my entire life for 1 month of pretending to be someone's wife, only to find out I was just a footnote in his story, a minor character in a much bigger lie. He clearly still wants to be with his kid's mother if he's spinning this insane story for her sake. I'm honestly and truly done. For the past 2 days, I've tried to keep my head down and stay calm until I can be out of his life for good. The most pathetic part is he hasn't even noticed how quiet I've gone, or maybe he doesn't care enough to ask. That realization hurts more than anything. So now I'm here, picking up the pieces, ready to repair my life on my own while he gets to go on unchanged, happy with his family. This isn't the ending I wanted, but at least now I'm free. Please, if you ever get that feeling in your gut that something isn't right, trust yourself the first time. Ignoring it will never make things better, no matter how much you want to believe otherwise. Update 2. I'd gone into the second bedroom to grab my passport and a few documents I kept in a folder on the shelf. While I was reaching up, I noticed the smoke detector had the tiniest pinprick of a red light. I don't know why it jumped out at me, maybe because I'd stared at this ceiling 100 times and never seen that little blink. I dragged a chair under it, twisted the cover, and it came off too easily. It wasn't wired to anything. It was a fake, a cheap little battery camera with a microSD card stuck in its belly. I don't even remember sitting down, but I was suddenly on the floor with a card in my palm and my laptop open. I plugged it in and clicked the first file. The footage started with our living room. Our couch. My throw blanket. Date and timestamp, 2 weekends ago. He walks in, swinging the door wide, and 3 kids trail after him, 2 boys and a little girl in a pink blue-y shirt. She kicks off tiny, Nike shoes and leaves them by the wall. I watched them like they were a movie about people who looked like me but weren't me. They ate cereal at our kitchen table. They used my mugs. He carried grocery bags in, joked with the kids, leaned down and kissed someone who was just outside the frame. The camera caught her when she crossed the room to grab paper towels. Same woman I'd talked to on the phone. Her voice was unmistakable, warm and casual in a way that said she'd been here before, and more than once. The clips kept going. Different days. Same angles. Same room. In one, my tote bag is slung over the chair in the corner, the one I only started using after I moved in. In another, there's a half-folded pile of my clothes on the couch because I must have left laundry midway and run out for something. They're there anyway, laughing while the kids color. He scoops the little girl up and she wraps her arms around his neck like it's the most natural thing in the world. Later in that same clip, he picks up her blue-y shirt from the arm of the couch and, without looking, tosses it into the hamper by the hallway. I saw my own handwriting on the sticky note on the wall behind him. There was no way to explain it away. They had been here, in our space, while I was just gone. I don't know where I was those hours, maybe at the grocery store, maybe taking a long walk to get out of my head, but they were here, inside our life, like I was an extra who had wandered into the wrong set. I sat there long enough to watch him kiss her full on the mouth in my kitchen. The timestamp had my suitcase, the one he'd helped me carry after I moved, parked right by the coat rack. I felt my throat close. Whatever version of denial I had left finally snapped. I copied everything. Every clip. I sent a still of the kiss to her with a single line, "So you know where your kids have been." She called me within 2 minutes. Her voice wasn't smug this time. She sounded small, then angry, then apologetic in these weird waves, like she was trying on different reactions to see which one fit. She swore she had no idea I was living there full time, that he'd told her I was a temporary roommate helping cover the mortgage while he was in transition. She swore the weekend she told me the kids had been at the apartment was one of the dates from the videos. She just didn't know I existed as what I am. I believed her in the way you believe someone who was telling you a lie they've also been sold. We decided to meet somewhere public, somewhere we could both breathe. I shoved my documents into my backpack and left with my carry-on. We met at a coffee shop 3 blocks away. She's pretty in a way that's even worse up close because I could see how tired she is, and because she has the kind of face you only let yourself relax around when you trust someone too much. I slid my phone across the table and hit play. She watched, jaw tight, eyes wet but stubbornly not crying. When the guys at the next table laughed at something on their own screen, she flinched like they were laughing at her. She told me he'd said I was a one-time mistake who had latched on, that he let me crash while I got it out of my system. He'd told her he was going to get back down to Texas full-time by the end of the year. He'd told her he was working overtime constantly to send more money for the kids, money she said hadn't actually shown up in months. She asked me if I'd go with her to his job. I didn't want to see him. I also wanted to put a match to the whole facade. So we went. Under those buzzing fluorescent lights, with people moving past us holding clipboards, I watched him walk out and spot the 2 of us standing side by side. He stopped like he'd run into a glass wall he hadn't seen. He did that soft boy smile he does when he's trying to neutralize a situation and said my name and then hers like we were the ones who needed calming down. She said, "Do not say a word," and I hit play on the clip again. His eyes flaked to the timestamp, to my suitcase in the background, to the shirt in the little girl's hand. He tried to say it was old footage, that it was from before, that I'd mixed things up. I said her name out loud, the name I'd only heard on the phone, and said, "Was it old footage when you told your daughter to keep her voice down because I might come back?" Because in one of those clips, clear as day, you hear him tell the boys to keep the volume down and the little girl asks, "Is she here?" And he says, "No, she's out, remember? We've got to be quick." He went very quiet. Then he tried a different tactic, the soft pleading one, and said he'd been waiting for the right time to tell me everything. He said he didn't want to lose me, that he didn't want to lose the kids, that he thought if he could just hold everything for a while longer it would sort itself out. Like time is a washer's cycle and lies just rinse clean if you run them long enough. I took the ring off and put it in his hand. He didn't reach for it. It slid onto the tile between us and clanked. One of his coworkers peered over like he'd stumbled into drama he didn't sign up for, and we walked out into the sun. At the curb, she told me he'd filed their taxes single last year. That he'd told her they weren't serious anymore because he needed to focus on work. She laughed without humor and said she could hear our apartment in the background of his calls sometimes, the hum of the old fridge, the little creak the hallway vent makes when the heat kicks on. She just didn't know how to line those sounds up with the person making them. I went straight to the leasing office with my suitcase and told them I'd be out in an hour, asked them to take my name off anything it was on jointly and to sign whatever I needed to sign. The girl at the desk looked at me like I'd spoken a different language, but she pulled up the file, and surprise, it was only ever in his name. He'd forgotten to add me after asking for my social and a scan of my ID the week I moved in for the paperwork. I called my bank from the parking lot and put a freeze on my credit while I was on hold waiting for an Uber. I didn't wait to find out what that was about. I'm not giving him one more access point to anything that has my name on it. Before I left the building, I took the fake smoke detector camera and ate the battery out of it with a kitchen knife. Petty, unhappy little parting gift, but it was the only way I could keep my hands from shaking. I left the key on the counter, took a photo of it there, and texted him the picture with, "The apartment is yours. The videos are backed up. Don't contact me again." I'm writing this from a motel room 2 miles from the airport with the sound of planes droning low over the roof. My flight's at 6 in the morning. My boss texted me back and told me to be at the office Monday if I want the desk back. I do. The mother of his kids sent me a screenshot of a message she just fired off to him, and all it said was, "Our daughter asked me tonight if we have to be quiet when your wife is home. She's 5. That one knocked the air out of me more than anything he said. Update 3. I didn't sleep. I lay there watching the red digits bleed minutes until my phone lit up with a new email that didn't belong to my life. Welcome to assigned cosigner packet. My name at the top in bold, the exact scan of my driver's license and the attachments, the same slightly crooked photo I took on my kitchen counter before I moved. The lease address was nowhere near our place 2 towns over, a tidy complex with a name that sounded like a painting over a dentist's chair. Move in next Friday. Occupants listed, her full name and 3 minors. Wonder notes, someone had typed, Fiancé key co-signing due to relocation. Limited cell service. He'd used his email to route the documents and slapped a scribbled version of my signature on the last page that looked just close enough to pass if you didn't know the way my S curls at the bottom. I called the office number at the bottom half expecting a voicemail. A woman answered, sleepy but trying to be professional, and I heard the click of a headset unmuting. I told her my name. I told her that lease was a crime with my face stapled to it. She went so quiet I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, very carefully, that the man had been in that afternoon with the kids, that he'd told them I was on a flight and couldn't speak. She forwarded me the whole application packet while I was still on the line. His pay stubs were there too, and even those made my neck prickle because they weren't the ones I'd seen, different font, decimals that didn't line up in the same way. DIY job. He'd written me and a spouse on their emergency contact forms. I printed the email at the motel's tiny computer station with the stapler chained to the desk. It spit the pages out one at a time with this low, tired groan. I took the stack and the camera card and walked into a police station that smelled like old coffee and snow boots. I handed over the paper, the microst, my thumb shaking while I tried to keep my voice even enough to say dates and addresses. The officer at the window kept rereading the part where the kids' names were typed under minor occupants, his mouth flattening more each time. He gave me an incident number and told me he'd flag it for the detective on identity theft and non-consensual surveillance. The phrases sounded like weapons and medical terms at once. When I stepped back onto the sidewalk, the air felt colder than it should have been. My phone buzzed in my pocket, unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang again. And again. Then the mother of his kids texted me, he's outside pounding on my door. I called the police. There were 3 more texts almost in a row, he's saying you ruined his life. Kids are awake. I'm not opening it. I went back to the motel and told the guy at the front desk I needed to change rooms. He looked at me for 2 seconds and then just slid a new key card across the counter without asking why. He said a man had been in earlier asking if I'd already checked out. He said he hadn't given him anything and there was a camera over the door if I wanted to report it. I moved my bag and sat on the edge of the new bed and stared at the painting of a plane taxiing toward a sunset so orange it looked like the sky had been microwaved. By the time the first shuttle left for the airport, my eyes were sand. I went through security on autopilot, let it saw age and tell me to take my laptop out twice, walked to my gate with a cup of coffee balanced on top of my carry-on like I was pretending to be someone who does this all the time. He called then from a number I didn't know and left a voicemail that is just him breathing for too long and then finally saying my name in that soft way, like maybe if he says it like that he can build a bridge back. I blocked it and watched runway lights string out like beads as we lifted. When I landed, my boss had my old key card waiting at reception and 2 plants I left 6 weeks ago nearly dead but still green at the edges. I watered them until the soil went dark. I sat at my desk and put my head down for a minute, and when I lifted it, my phone was flashing with a new voicemail, this time from a detective using a very flat voice. I started to feel safe around. He'd watched enough of the clips to call it evidence, his word, not mine. He said the cameras were Wi-Fi enabled and registered to an email address that was my ex's full name with 2 numbers after it. He said there was a second device on the account that never pinged again after last night. If you see a smoke detector in any bedrooms of that apartment, he said, do not go back in there. I told him I wasn't even in the same state. He sighed like that was the first good thing he'd heard all day. He asked if I wanted to add a no contact stipulation to the report. I said yes. I pictured a piece of paper building a wall. He told me the other woman had been in to file too, a small square receipt of safety in my pocket next to mine, and then an officer had gone to her place overnight when he wouldn't leave. He left before we arrived, he said. We'll follow up. At lunch, the leasing agent from the new complex called back and said the owner had flagged the file and they'd be sending a certified letter to the address he'd put on the application, CCing the police. He said you and he were planning a wedding here at the gazebo, she added, and there was such a thin thread of pity in her voice I almost laughed because the whole thing had tipped from personal apocalypse into farce. A gazebo. Of course a gazebo. I went home to my old apartment that still smells faintly like the soap I like, set my suitcase on the floor, and finally closed my eyes for an hour. When I woke up, there was a photo message from an unknown account, no text, just an image of a ring on a hand that wasn't mine, same cut, same band. I stared at it and the room clicked into focus around it, the hum of my own refrigerator, the way the light slants in the late afternoon and throws one rectangle on the wall. Then the message after, hi. I think we're engaged to the same man. Update 4. I called the number. A woman answered on the second ring and said my name with this careful tenderness that made the back of my neck go hot. I asked her to tell me something I couldn't Google. She said the name of his dog, that died in college. She said the exact freckle count on his left forearm because she traced them when she couldn't sleep. Then she sent me 3 photos in a row. In the first, he's kneeling on mismatched river stones in front of a white gazebo with fairy lights strung ham-fisted around the railing, kids' paper lanterns bobbing from thumbtacks. In the second, his hand is up, holding open a jewelry box I know too well. In the third, her hand with a ring on it, thumb pressed to show scale, a tiny pale crescent of a scar near the edge of her nail. The band looked like mine because it was mine. I could see the prom on the left where it grabbed my sweater once and I bent it back too gently, leaving this invisible to anyone else hitching the curve. It's a silhouette you could recognize the way you recognize your own handwriting. I zoomed so far and the pixels went to grains. The dip was still there. She asked if we could meet face to face because she didn't want to put pieces of her life into a stranger's phone and then go to sleep with the light off. We picked a library, with ugly carpeting and automatic doors that sighed like they were bored of everyone coming in with emergencies. She was sitting in the corner chair by the large print section, a coat folded on her lap even though it was warm inside, hair scraped into a bun like she got ready while thinking about something else. She took the ring off without me asking and laid it in my palm. It was cool and heavy in a way I couldn't make relate to anything soft. The notch in the prom was real. There was a new nickel on the underside of the band I didn't recognize, a bright sharp mouth of metal like it had been introduced to cement recently, like maybe on a floor I'd watched it skitter across. He proposed to her last Friday. She said it like she was reading the date off a receipt, over and over because it was making her sick in real time. The kids were there, she said. He told me he wanted them to see what forever looks like. She laughed a sound I wouldn't call laughter. He had told her the gazebo was meaningful, and he'd picked that complex because it was central and the kids liked the pool. She showed me a selfie of them under the string lights. If you looked past their heads, you could see the leasing office glass door propped open with a rubber wedge. She thought it was romantic that he'd asked for permission to use the grounds. I could hear the leasing agent's voice in my head talking about the gazebo like a punchline no one caught. She slid his messages across to me in an endless scrolling loop. He'd told her I was a friend from Minnesota staying until she finds her footing, she's been through a lot. He used the phrase soft heart about me in a way that made my stomach turn because I could see where he put it down in conversations to buy himself time. He'd told her the kid's mother was overwhelmed. He'd told her he was stepping up. He'd told her we'd probably all be friends one day. She had planner pages with venue tours circled, a screenshot of a Pinterest board of cakes he'd liked, and I could see 2 of the same photos I'd once sent him when we joked about lemon curd as a hill I would die on. She had a flyer someone had slid into her bag from a dress place with an appointment time that was in 3 days. Her makeup was steady but her jaw jumped and unjumped and I could see the line where she was clenching around words more than once. Do you know this number? She asked, and typed a phone number into my phone. It was a second number for him. Burner. Different area code. He'd used it to text her when he was at work and the service is trash. She'd found it 3 hours before she texted me, on a label inside a shoebox for kids' sneakers in her hall closet, an oval sticker with the digits black on white. He did this thing where he takes things that off and puts different ones on so he remembers when he bought them, she said, not looking proud or embarrassed, just hollow. I think he forgot this one stuck there. When I gave the ring back to her hand, she didn't close her fingers. She held it like maybe it would tell her a story out loud if she was gentle enough. He said it was his grandmother's, she said. I told her his grandmother is allergic to gold and only wears silver. We looked at the ugly carpet. I could feel our brains reshaping around the dull, obvious center of a world where none of the sentences out of his mouth had ever been freighted with the weight they pretended to carry. We walked out together to the sidewalk where the wind dragged our hair to the side and the flag rope clapped the pole. I called the detective from Update 3 and told him there was another fiancé key with my ring on her hand and that I could prove it wasn't a duplicate from a mall kiosk because I'd injured it by loving it idiotically. He breathed out hard enough I heard it crackle in the speaker and asked us to come in. He took the ring and a little evidence bag after she signed a property statement that read like a rizzle. He took a photo of the engraving inside and compared it to the original sales photo he'd pulled from an email invoice he'd already subpoenaed that morning because, surprise, he'd done that. Same stock number, same serial. He looked over the top of his glasses at us like a man trying to calculate how many lies fit into one calendar month. He told us something I hadn't even thought to ask. There was a second camera registered to the account, last pinged from her building's Wi-Fi a week ago. Check your smoke detectors, he said without being dramatic about it. Or don't. Let us do it. We drove in 2 cars to her place, a base 3-story with the kind of flower beds that are rocks pretending to be flowers. She unlocked her door and immediately stepped to the side like a person who knows what her face will do if she stands in the middle of her own life and watches strangers move through it. The detective's partner, a woman with a braid thick as rope and unblinking eyes, unscrewed the hallway smoke detector with practiced hands and held it level to the light. Real. The bedroom one came down like a cap off a marker. Fake. Same gut cheat body, same belly full of a little red blinking liar. The partner slid the microssed out, with tweezers from a case, like a travel Bible. The detective didn't look at us when he said, "That's a felony." He just said it to the room as if he had to put the word somewhere to explain the error. The woman who might still be wearing my engagement stood with her arms crossed so tight her palms were blanching at the edges and said, "I had a dream last week that I was being watched but it was so on the nose I didn't let myself have it." In her kitchen there was a calendar with dinners penciled in pasto, taco night, his name on Wednesday with a smiley face. Kids' names, I didn't recognize on Friday with little stars, soccer cleat doodle, I won. He brought them here once, she said softly, like maybe if she spoke louder the walls would join in. He said he wanted me and them to meet, that it was time for me to be a second home. He told me to keep the volume down when we were playing freeze dance, so the neighbor wouldn't complain. I thought. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. He'd had packages delivered to her address. We pulled a stack of parcels from the coat closet, a generic Wi-Fi router he'd helped her upgrade to and a small box that had been opened and re-taped with packing tape that didn't match the first layer. Inside, a USB wall charger with a camera eye winking at nobody. The detective took it with the same neutral face you reserve for broken toys. On the way out, the other fiancé key's phone lit with his name across the top. She let it ring out. Then another number. Then the burner. Then an email that peeped in, subject line, "You're ruining this." She sat down on the bottom stair and let her head hit the banister and said, "He told me he used to sabotage good things because he didn't believe he deserved them." I said, "He told me that too," and for a second we both laughed like idiots because the line read like a fortune cookie written by a man who collects hurt to spend it later. Back at my office, I signed a form for an emergency protective order that the detective's assistant printed on paper so crisp it felt like it could cut your fingers. He walked me through it with that same flat, careful voice. He told me they'd be serving him tonight if they could get him in one place long enough to say his full name out loud to his face and have someone nod. When my manager ducked into my doorway and asked if I wanted the afternoon off, I said no because sitting at my desk aligning a spreadsheet to a right margin felt like a religion that might save me. I lined up cells until the rectangles obeyed. My plants in the corner were standing a little louder by 3. My phone lit again with a number I didn't know and this time a voicemail dropped in without ringing. I put my earbuds in like I was about to listen to a podcast about finance and press play. Silence crackled. Then his mother's voice, soft as tissue paper and twice as fragile. She said she didn't know where to start. She said she was sorry for everything I know and everything I don't. She said she had a grandbaby voice asking in the background if daddy is in trouble. She said she'd always thought he bends the truth to keep people from crying. And then she said, very simply, he has a way of standing in a doorway and making two rooms think he is fully in them, and then he leaves. I wrote that line down on a sticky note without knowing why until I looked at it and felt my lungs decide to inflate on purpose. At 5, the other woman, the kid's mother, texted me a screenshot of an email from a jeweler's store credit company with my name in the responsible party box and a balance at the bottom that made my teeth ring. Date, 3 weeks ago. The detective had asked me to pull a full report and there it was, glowing like a warning flare, open the day after I sent him a list of jobs I could do from the city so moving wouldn't bankrupt me. The credit freeze had nailed the door shut on any more, but this one had already slithered in. I called the number, gave my incident case, and put my ear on hold music that sounded like water pretending to be song. By the end of it, I had a fraud dispute logged and a promise for a letter with checkboxes in 10 days. My name stabbed into so many forms I could feel it bruise. At 6, the detective called to say they'd served him at his job. He hadn't made a scene, no shouting, just that same small smile, the one he thinks is mercy. He'd signed for it and put the paper in his back pocket like a receipt. He asked if you'd given us permission to pull his emails, the detective said in a voice I couldn't translate. I told him we had what we needed. He told me to stay put. He told me to lock my door tonight even if I lied on the 3rd floor, with an entry code nobody remembers. He told me the phrase for what he'd done with the cameras is invasion of privacy with a peeping device, which sounds like the kind of charge you'd give to a cartoon. He said sometimes cartoon words hold very sharp teeth. I met the other fiancé wth after all of that because you learn fast that sharing oxygen with someone who knows you just inherited a specific unique absurdity is worth more than sleep. We sat in a booth sticky with sugar. She told me he'd said he quit drinking last year and then she opened her cupboard and pulled out a bottle of whiskey whose seal was peeled up and pushed down neat to hide the rip. She told me she had a pregnancy test under her sink and she hadn't taken it because reality was already a landslide and she didn't know if she could be alive under more. I didn't say what rattled at the back of my throat. I just pressed my palm to the table so she could see I had a hand that wasn't trembling if she needed to borrow it. When I got home, the sky was an 80 play held too close to my face and there was the sound of someone practicing scales on a trumpet in a building 2 over. I watered the plants again even though you're not supposed to and wiped a single dead leaf off the pothos like it was a full funeral. I plugged my phone in and set it face down and then turned it over again because my nerves are stupid and loyal and wanted to watch. There was a final email waiting from a leasing agent with a gazebo, subject line, incident report filed. Attached, a photo of a printed sign zip tied to the gazebo railing that said private property. No events without written permission. I stared at it until the words fuzzed. The other fiancé, he texted me a picture at 10:11 p.m. Her ring, not on her finger anymore, in the bottom of a Ziploc with the edge left open like it needed air. I'm bringing it to the station in the morning, she wrote. Also, I took the test. Whatever happens, I'm not doing any of it with him. I put my phone face down again and this time left it that way. The plane over my building really did sound like a zipper this time, tutting the night closed. I lay back and watched the ceiling until I could almost see the tiny red blink of a camera that wasn't there. Then I reached up into the dark and tapped the place where it would be and let my hand fall when I didn't touch anything but paint,